Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new New York Times and Siena College polling data from three key battleground important swing states from the Sunbelt that really can determine who wins this election. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press like button, share this video if you are interested. We have memberships, you can find a link to that in the description section. So now let's begin. Let's start off with Arizona. So based off these polls conducted from September 17th all the way to the 21st, very recently, Arizona has 713 registered voters or likely voters in that pollster, in which Donald Trump has a 5-point lead in this state. Keep in mind, Biden had originally won this state, so that's going to be a flip for the former president, Donald Trump. He actually flips two states, Georgia as well, in these new polls from the New York Times, which, if you take a look at their track record in histories or years past, in recent elections past, both in 2016 and in 2020, they actually overestimated Democrats' support. They underestimated Trump in 2016. They overestimated Hillary Clinton. They overestimated Joe Biden. So realistically, the numbers could actually be way, way higher for Donald Trump. So he is indeed cracking 50% in the state of Arizona. Kamala Harris is polling at 45%. And then you take a look at Georgia, in which Kamala Harris is also at a 45%, and Donald Trump is at 49%. Now, the sample size in these are really small, I would say, because in Georgia it's only 682 voters, and also North Carolina, which we would get to right after this, 682 voters as well. And I mean, Arizona is not that much different at 713 voters. But in Georgia, Trump holds a 4-point lead in this state. He is getting 49% of the overall vote. And then in North Carolina, that's actually two flips for Donald Trump. North Carolina, he already won that twice, so that's going to be another hold. Actually, the only hold for him from these new polls, in which he's at 49%. Kamala Harris is at 47%. So that's a 2-point lead for Donald Trump. Now, I would have to disagree with this because I just don't see a realistic scenario. I don't see the reality in which Trump wins Georgia by 4 points, but he only wins North Carolina by 2 points. That would mean that would mean North Carolina would be 2 points bluer than Georgia, which literally is not going to happen. It never happens, because if you take a look at 2020, North Carolina actually voted to the right of Georgia. Now all of a sudden, it's the exact opposite, in which the polls here suggest that Georgia is going to vote to the right of North Carolina, which that usually never happens, besides maybe in 2016, but still that was a much different election. But in 2020, North Carolina was actually more red than Georgia was, which we'll see how that ends up going on election day. But right off the bat, that's already two flips from the Sunbelt for Donald Trump. Let's take a look at his path to victory. So he already flips Arizona from the poll. Obviously, he's up by 5 points, a massive victory. And he flips Georgia. He's up by 4 points in this poll. So that's already two flips for the former president. In my opinion, he might flip like 4 to 5 key major states. And obviously, we don't have, that's the only polls that we are getting from these three states. Now, this is the 2020 map. Obviously, Arizona and Georgia went to Biden. He had 303 electoral votes. So right now on your screen, look at the 2020 map. But according to the polls, Trump gets Arizona, let's just say, and he gets Georgia. That puts him already at 262 electoral votes just from flipping those states. Now, where he has to rely on really is the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt is literally going to decide everything. It's literally the deciding factor. And as we all know, Pennsylvania exactly is going to be the tipping point state. Now, Trump only needs only needs one of these three Rust Belt states. And most likely, if you take a look at recent elections past, historically, that state would be Wisconsin. Trump would probably get Wisconsin part of his easiest pathway with its 10 electoral votes, and that already gives him the presidency. Yet again, he only needs one key Rust Belt state. He gets 272 electoral votes, and according to the polls, Pennsylvania is actually voting to the right of Wisconsin, which, just like in Georgia and North Carolina, you take a look at recent elections past, it's probably going to be wrong, because usually, just like I mentioned earlier, they have Georgia voting to the right of North Carolina, which that did not happen in 2020. And same thing goes for these two states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. The polls, yet again, have Pennsylvania voting to the right of Wisconsin, which literally is not realistic. That does not normally happen. Obviously, Pennsylvania was, I believe, 0.6% was the margin, 0.6 percent more to the left than Wisconsin was, and all of a sudden Wisconsin's going to be more bluer than Pennsylvania. I just don't think so. So that's why I said, historically speaking, that one state that Trump can get from the Rust Belt is Wisconsin. And Kamala Harris can still hang on to Michigan and Pennsylvania, but she would still lose the election. And she can still win Nevada, and she still loses because she flipped those two Sunbelt states, Arizona and Georgia, according to the brand new polls from the New York Times. And now, if we're not taking a look at, historically speaking, if we're taking a look at just the polls alone, okay, let's just say she does win Wisconsin, because apparently it's more bluer than Pennsylvania this time around, according to the majority of polls in 538 and RCP as well. Maybe there is a reality in which Pennsylvania does vote to the right of Wisconsin. Let's just say because, okay, Trump got shot there, for an example, Butler County's right next to Pittsburgh, so therefore, Trump's going to have skyrocket turnout in Pittsburgh, let's just say. Okay, Trump wins Pennsylvania. That gives him even more electoral votes. 19 more than, actually 9 more than Wisconsin. 281 to Kamala Harris' 257. Yet again, he only needs one Rust Belt state. In my opinion, it's probably going to be Wisconsin is going to vote to the right of both Michigan and Pennsylvania because, like I mentioned, historically speaking, Wisconsin was the reddest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020, 2016, and I believe the Obama era as well. Now, the least likely Rust Belt state Trump's going to get is Michigan because, obviously, it was the bluest in 2020. It voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, went to Biden by like nearly 3 percentage points. Michigan's always more bluer than Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, obviously. Now, what's tricky about Michigan is the large uncommitted vote. Remember in the Democratic primaries, roughly 100,000 voters voted uncommitted. So you should keep an eye on that. And obviously, Dearborn, Michigan, I think can get way more competitive than usually. You should probably pay attention to Dearborn, Michigan, because I think with that large uncommitted vote share, I definitely think this state can go down to the wire. It's going to be like a toss-up, 50-50 for either candidate. But as of right now, I do have Kamala Harris winning this state by, within 0 to 1 percentage point, a tilt margin very narrowly. It's going to be close, mainly because I do think that obviously this state was the bluest out of the three most important Rust Belt states. So this is actually my map, if you guys did not know. 297 electoral votes, because I actually have Trump winning Nevada as well, which I think the polls are going to be off there. And by the way, Wisconsin polling is always off. You take a look at 2020, they had Biden winning the state right before the election at, by 6 percentage points. He did not even get near that. He won it by literally under a percentage point. 0.6% is nowhere near 6 points. That's a likely margin. He only won it by a tilt margin of 20,000 voters, which, by the way, is less of a margin than Trump's victory in the state of Wisconsin in the 2016 election. So Wisconsin polling is always off. This is not a new thing, and I do expect the polls to be off, which is why I actually have Trump doing better than what majority of polls say. Now, surprisingly, I actually think these polls are overestimating him. I don't have him winning Arizona by 5 points. That's a great margin. That's even greater than 2016. I understand that obviously there's a major border crisis. Arizona is a border state, and immigration is a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address that whatsoever. I get that, and also there's a lot of McCain-style voters. Some people on the right, Republicans would call them neocons or the establishment. A lot of them actually broke for Biden in 2020. I could see a good amount of them actually going back to Donald Trump because they just can't trust someone like Kamala Harris, obviously, and it's going to come down to those independent voters, those undecided voters on election day. Whoever wins them is probably, as we all know it, going to win the election on election day, election week, whatever it really is. We don't really know at this point, but so far things are going very smoothly. So this is my map exactly. Now we go back to whatever New York Times is suggesting, in which Trump does win Arizona and Georgia, but then he loses Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Yet again, it's extremely close. Kamala Harris barely gets past 270 at 276 electoral votes. Yet again, Trump only needs one Rust Belt state. That's his pathway. Historically speaking, he's going to get Wisconsin. Now you take a look at what the polls are saying. He's going to get Pennsylvania. So it's either Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter. One of those states will get Trump the victory. He does not even need Nevada. He only needs to flip 3 states, and that will literally give him the election. All he needs is to flip 3 states, and I think Georgia is basically a give me at this point. That's a lockdown. I think he's more than likely going to win that. I also do think he's most likely going to win Arizona because Kamala Harris is not popular in that state whatsoever. Forget the polls, just like Alan Lichtman says, completely disregard the polls, and I agree with that 100%. So let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on the new polls from New York Times and Siena College, which shows Trump having a 5-point lead in Arizona, a 4-point lead in Georgia, and just 2 in North Carolina, which, speaking of North Carolina, I haven't really talked about that in this video. Mark Robinson, I believe, is actually hurting Donald Trump, and he's basically dragging down his margin, and that's why this state is, should not be this close. It really shouldn't, because North Carolina voted to the right of both Georgia and Arizona. Both those states had flipped to Biden, but North Carolina stayed red for Donald Trump. And all of a sudden, North Carolina is more blue than Georgia is, which it wasn't like that in 2020, which is my point, which is why I don't understand these polls. It's probably because of Mark Robinson, and he is refusing to drop out, but that does not necessarily mean it's going to be enough for Kamala to win that state. It's not going to happen. So, I mean, Trump still has a 2-point lead in this state. And you take a look at the popular vote, there is a realistic chance that Donald Trump actually wins the popular vote, which I think he can. Now, if he does end up winning Michigan right off the bat, then yes, I do think Trump's going to win the popular vote. He would probably get like 312 electoral votes. But even if Kamala wins the popular vote by just like, let's just say 2 million votes, for example, exactly Hillary Clinton, she did that in 2016. She's not going to win the election. That's not enough for her. She's probably going to have to win it by greater than 2 million votes because Clinton did that in 2016. She did not end up winning. So I think this election is harder for Harris than it is for Trump. I think you would probably be in. I would say Trump is in a better position, which that may be surprising to some people because the polls are saying that Kamala has the Rust Belt. I wouldn't say locked under control, but she is barely winning those states, while Trump is winning the Sunbelt, according to majority of polls. Is because I do think you take a look at the polling error originally in 2020. You apply the polling error to a number of these battleground states. Realistically, Donald Trump is actually winning because these polls are more than likely going to be wrong. And they always underestimate Donald Trump. In 2016, they did that. In 2020, they did that. So what makes you think they won't underestimate Donald Trump again? That would make absolutely no sense, which is why in reality, he is the favorite in this election. That's what I'm trying to tell people. Honestly, I would be shocked if Kamala wins the election. I do think Alan Lichtman will be wrong at the end of the day. So that's pretty much it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press the like button, share this video, and if you are interested, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Thank you everyone for watching.